PR Connections Radio presents.
Welcome to Vegas Hockey Hub here on PRConnectionsRadio.com, the voice of new media. I'm your host, Ian Rachiele. And on this edition of Vegas Hockey Hub, while everything is going on and all the stuff that's happening right here, right now, I want to pivot very quickly, okay? I want to kind of take a detour from our normal Vegas Golden Knights conversation, and I want to talk about the rest of the Pacific Division. We've talked about, for example, the Vancouver Canucks. We've talked about the Calgary Flames. We've talked about other organizations that are in the Pacific Division. But what we're going to do on this episode and this edition of Vegas Hockey Hub is that we are going to be talking about the Los Angeles Kings, and more importantly, considering what has been going on and considering what happened in the first round with the Edmonton Oilers and the LA Kings, a question really needs to be asked. And that is, what is the future of the Los Angeles Kings? Where is the direction of this team moving forward? And more importantly, considering, what's about to happen, right? Considering what is going to be going on in the future, an important question needs to be answered. And we're going to answer it on this edition of Vegas Hockey Hub. And it is, are the Los Angeles Kings, are the LA Kings still a contender in the Western Conference? Is their window done? Why I think it could be and why I think it couldn't be. We're going to break down all of that on this edition of Vegas Hockey Hub. Now, go to our website, www.prconnectionsradio.com. Check out all the content we have on there. We have over a dozen shows now on the network, so I highly recommend going onto the website and checking out all the content. Go to our social media pages at Vegas Hockey Hub. We are on all major platforms, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. We are on all major platforms, so I highly recommend checking out our social media. And if you want to follow your host, I'm also down there at Ian J. Rachiele. Now, in order to really set this up correctly, I want to kind of take you back just a little bit, okay? Before we get into the playoffs, okay? Before we get into what they did in the regular season, and before we get into even the 44-win performance they had this past season, and the 99 points in the regular season, I want to talk about one important detail about the Los Angeles Kings. I want to mention the one valuable situation that we have to discuss if we're going to talk about if the LA Kings are still a contender in the Western Conference. There's one aspect we need to focus on if we're going to talk about the Pacific Division and what the future of the Los Angeles Kings is. And that is setting up their general manager, setting up their president of hockey operations, and more importantly, kind of discussing how their moves have created the domino effect that we are at right here, right now. Now, before some people kind of question what we are talking about, I need to set up who their general manager is, because it is a very important detail of this story. Now, with the Los Angeles Kings organization, they have a general manager who is a legend. They have someone who is a very well-known name in the hockey world. As a matter of fact, they have someone who is in the Hockey Hall of Fame as their general manager. And that is former player, Stanley Cup winning defenseman, Rob Blake. And not only has Rob Blake been with the LA Kings, not only has he been in the front office with them for almost a decade now, but this is the same Rob Blake who, when you study his career, when you see what he has done with the LA Kings organization, this is a guy who has been their general manager of the team for the past 7 seasons. And what he has done over the past 7 seasons is what really needs to be mentioned here, because those last 7 seasons that Rob Blake has been their general manager, the last 7 seasons where he has been in charge of the LA Kings organization has been very important. And the reason why I point that out is because when it comes to Rob Blake, when it comes to the moves he has created in LA, a lot of it was preserving the older players. A lot of it was keeping some core players, keeping some lifers with the LA Kings around. And those 2 main players that he has kept around for the longest time with the LA Kings is Anze Kopitar, their captain, and the face of a defense in Drew Doughty. Now, if I really wanted to go that far back, I could have included Dustin Brown. I could have included Jonathan Quick, but let's talk about the active players in this organization. Because with Rob Blake being in control since 2017, he has made sure to keep around guys like Drew Doughty. Despite the cap hit, he is still there. Anze Kopitar, he being the captain, being one of the best players in franchise history, they've kept him around. I mean, shoot, they even have a bottom 6 forward in Trevor Lewis, who they brought back after being in Calgary and after being in other places for a while. They brought him back as a bottom 6 forward when he was in their glory days and when they won the championship back in 2012 and back in 2014. He was a member of that organization. And how has Kopitar and Doughty really performed over the last couple of years? Well, Anze Kopitar is actually one of the rare few players that the LA Kings have gotten right in terms of keeping them around. Even though he is in his mid-30s at this point, you have someone at Anze Kopitar who still to this day is producing for the LA Kings. This is still somebody who is a Lady Byng representative year in and year out. This is someone at Anze Kopitar who has hit 70 points in the regular season back-to-back years. This is someone who hits 40 or more assists in 4 of his last 5 years playing in LA. So Anze Kopitar would not be the problem here. The situation that actually could be brought up is not the $7 million cap hit with Anze Kopitar, but instead, I want to talk about one of the interesting cap hits in the NHL, and that is the $11 million man himself in Drew Doughty. Now, do not get me wrong. When Drew Doughty was in his prime, when Drew Doughty was arguably one of the best defensemen in all of hockey, he was someone who, over a stretch of about 4 or 5 years, he was alongside guys like Duncan Keith. He was there alongside some great defensemen like Shea Weber. He was indeed one of the best defensemen in all of hockey. I mean, shoot, from 2012 to 2017, he was arguably one of the best statistically sound hockey players in all of the NHL. But he signed a contract extension, and it actually was during the Rob Blake era when he was in the front office. And this contract with Drew Doughty has not been paying off as well as some people were hoping for, okay? Now, has he not been injured? Yes, I will give him credit. He plays every single game. He suited up for every single game this season. He only missed 1 game this past season. But statistically, if you're Drew Doughty, statistically, when you have defensemen who are doing amazing like Adam Fox has been doing in New York, when you have guys who have been amazing like Quinn Hughes in Vancouver, when you see what Erik Karlsson did in San Jose not that while back, and then you compare what Drew Doughty has done with that $11 million cap hit, it kind of makes it not look that great in retrospective, okay? Because you got to remember, this is someone who isn't runner-up and winning the Norris Trophy like he was during his prime. You got to remember, this is someone who was a Norris Trophy winner during his prime. But now, with Drew Doughty, can you make an argument that he is still top 10 defensively? Like, what metrics and what Saber metrics can you use to validate Drew Doughty today still being an elite defenseman? Now, is he bad? No. But is he elite? I would say no. And you got to remember, if you're paying him $11 million, it is on the notion that you are getting prime Drew Doughty. And over the last 2 years, you've been getting good Drew Doughty, but not elite Drew Doughty. And it really makes you question, with that cap hit, with the $11 million the LA Kings are going to be giving Drew Doughty, is he even the best defenseman on that team anymore? Or is there some younger defensemen that are eventually going to be back into the lineup and they're going to be taking over for Drew Doughty? I mean, keep this in mind. Brant Clark, at only 20 years old, will be playing his first full-time season with the LA Kings coming up soon. All right? When it comes to him, he will be suiting up and being an everyday member for the first time in his career. They're counting on defensemen like him. You also have some defensemen like Matt Roy and Jordan Spence, who are a lot younger than Drew Doughty and are, more importantly, getting better and better and better. So, overall, Drew Doughty is good, but he's not great like he used to be. Anze Kopitar is great. He is arguably one of the best players on the team. In fact, you'd make an argument that outside of the other two players I'm going to mention, Anze Kopitar would be on that level. All right? So those are your two aging guys the LA Kings have. Kopitar and Doughty. Two guys who are having a combined cap hit of $18 million, and that is thanks to Rob Blake. One of them is paying off dividends. The other one, if you gave him a $7 million cap hit for 50 points, I would understand. But $11 million cap hit, making him one of the highest paid defensemen in all of hockey for said 50 points, that is a bit questionable with Drew Doughty. Now, at the number 2, all right, this is part 2. So part 1 was the old guard. Those are your faces of the franchise, and Anze Kopitar and Drew Doughty. But the second option is two people in their prime right now in LA. And these are the two backbones of the LA Kings. Okay? All right. You have a guy like Adrian Kempe. And this is someone who at 27 years old has been getting better and better and better every single year he has been with the LA Kings. This is somebody who, when he played in 2019-2020, when he was about 22 years old, he barely had 30 points on the season. All right? This was someone who only had about a dozen goals during the season with the LA Kings. Fast forward to this past season, and when it comes to Adrian, 28 goals, 47 assists, and 75 points on the year. That is a career high for him. And overall, when you really study what he has become, not only can I make an argument right now that if it wasn't for the next guy I'm going to be talking about, if it wasn't for the next player who has been consistently a game maker, a playmaker, a changing of momentum in the NHL, he would be the best player on the LA Kings. But when it comes to Adrian Kempe, this is someone who, like I said, 75 points this season, 67 points the season prior, 54 the year before that. He is getting better with each season he is in LA. And this is going to be somebody who, former first-round pick, someone who's been in the organization for almost a decade now since being drafted. But overall, when it comes to the LA Kings, they have a guy like him that can pay off massive dividends if you could stay a contender. Why? If you're going to want to win a championship, he's going to be one of the vital reasons why you might do so. His goal scoring, his efficiency, what he does on the offensive side of the puck is valuable. But if it wasn't for arguably the best player on the LA Kings, all right, if it wasn't for Kevin Fiala, if it wasn't for a guy like him, who I will actually give credit to, Rob Blake, this is one of the few moves that I actually was positively on when it happened. During the 2022 NHL offseason, when the LA Kings traded a first-round pick to go up and then acquire someone like a Kevin Fiala, it was a fantastic move. Going out and trading draft capital and a prospect, might I add, to go get Kevin Fiala. By the way, that prospect turned out to be Brock Faber. This is a move that actually, in 4 or 5 years from now, might be a win-win, depending on what happens with Minnesota and LA. But overall, how has he done since coming to LA? How has Kevin Fiala done since being acquired by the LA Kings? Well, let's just say over the past 2 seasons, he has scored 145 points in 2 seasons. It's also the same Kevin Fiala who has had 52 goals in those 2 years. So you have someone who has arguably been the best performer in LA. Back-to-back 70 points. This is someone who has actually achieved an 80-point mark once before. That actually happened to be his last season in Minnesota. So you have someone who over the last 3 seasons of his career has scored 230 points. And he's still 27. So consider your options with the Los Angeles Kings. Part 1 was the old guard, Kopitar and Doughty. Part 2 is your current core with Kempe and with Fiala. Now, what's part 3? Okay? What is part 3 of the future of the LA Kings? Well, it is your new core with the LA Kings. And more importantly, those 3 guys that are going to be a huge, vital part of the upcoming team. One is a defenseman, and one is a center. Okay? One of these guys I just talked about a few minutes ago when I talked about the upcoming defensemen that are going to be coming in with Drew Doughty. And the second one is a center who is now finally living up to the hype. This is someone who this past season has earned that status when he was drafted 2nd overall. And the first player I'm talking about is Quinton Byfield. All right? Quinton Byfield, when they drafted him 2nd overall in the 2020 NHL draft, there was a lot of speculation about how well Quinton Byfield would do with the organization, okay? This was a lot of speculation on how he would perform with the LA Kings. Well, his first 2 seasons with the LA Kings was not great, okay? He played 46 games, he had 5 goals and 11 points with the LA Kings, okay? Not what you're thinking of when you're drafted 2nd overall in the NHL draft. There's also the same Quinton Byfield who, when you looked at what he did in the AHL during this time, he only had 26 points during that same time period. So overall, there was really no indication that he was going to become a superstar. He could be a potential star with the LA Kings? Well, year 3, he has 22 points in the NHL. He only in 53 games. He doesn't play the full season. And he actually spent some time in the AHL, only racked up 15 points. So there were some doubters about him. There was a lot of people wondering what was wrong with Quinton Byfield. What was the situation? Why couldn't he develop? Well, this past season in 2023, 2024, he is now living up to that hype now. This season, 20 goals, 55 points, and only missed 2 games. It's also the same guy who, over the past little bit, he's actually doing very well in his playoff motion. I mean, people got to remember, this is the same guy who scored his first playoff goal in the series prior in 2022-2023. And in this playoff season, he is averaging a little under a point per game. So for the 21-year-old, he is kind of redeeming himself now with the Los Angeles Kings. And for Brandt Clarke, this is someone who at 21 years old, just like Quinton Byfield, he's only played 25 games in the NHL. Now, I do want to mention in those 25 games, he has gotten 16 penalty minutes already in those 25 games. But so far in his career playing in LA, 25 games played, 2 goals, 8 points, and 16 penalty minutes. But he's still young. And if you want to see any redeeming qualities with Brandt Clarke, in 50 games this season with Ontario, the AHL, 10 goals and 46 points in the AHL. It's also the same Brandt Clarke that has had 49 penalty minutes this season in the AHL. So he could be feisty. He could drop the gloves if need be. And that's what you need in LA. You need Quinton Byfield. You need Brandt Clarke. And there is the fourth and final part that's going to determine the future of the LA Kings. And this is the most important one. All right, I left this for last. The most important part of the LA Kings moving forward is the goaltending. Okay? The goaltending is a huge question mark because you have an aging veteran in Cam Talbot. You have a veteran in Phoenix Copley. And you also have, as a backup, a veteran in David Riddick. So this is a situation where you have all 3 goaltenders from this past season that are over the age of 30. Okay, so what do you do if you are the LA Kings, right? What is your move next? What are you going to do in terms of goaltending? If you're a coach in Jim Hiller, who, by the way, helped them make the playoffs after they fired their previous coach and brought him in after being the assistant. What do you do if you are the LA Kings? Because having a bunch of aging veteran goaltenders doesn't really say much for the team. Okay? Now, I want you to keep in mind one important name. Okay? There is one important name that you actually want to remember when it comes to the LA Kings. And that is the fact that they do have a prospect. They do have a young goaltender in the farm system that maybe, just maybe, could actually pay off massive dividends for the LA Kings if he does end up providing value. And that player that I'm talking about is someone they acquired during the NHL draft about a year ago. And it is a goaltender they got from the Buffalo Sabres in Eric Portelio. Okay? This is someone who is a very young goaltender. He's from Sweden. He's going to come over, and he is someone that could provide value to the LA Kings if given the right situation. Because like I mentioned before, you have not one, not two, but a trio of veteran goaltenders with the LA Kings. It's been their MO for a while. And considering you have a guy in Portelio who is a AHL goaltender, he spent the entire time in the AHL playing for Ontario. And if he's ready, if he is capable of being a NHL goaltender with the LA Kings, then you give a guy who is going to be 24 years old come next season. You give him a chance. Because this is a NHL roster that you really do not have a definitive goaltender who is not in his 30s. Right now, the LA Kings are counting on a goaltender who did great a while ago. This is a Los Angeles Kings organization that is hoping that they can have a goaltender who did amazing stuff somewhere else and will be able to rely on and count on for an entire season this upcoming year in LA. So overall, when it comes to Los Angeles Kings, when it comes to the future of the LA Kings, there's a two-part question. I'm going to answer it right here, right now. A, are the LA Kings still a contender? The answer is yes. They're still a contender. You have Kempe, you have Fiala, you have those young talent in Byfield and with Clark. But what is the future of the LA Kings really depends on the long-term future in net. Until they figure out, and Rob Blake and the front office in LA, until they can finally decide what the future is in net, that will tell you what the future of the LA Kings are. Goaltending is the most valuable position in the NHL. Most important is defense, but the most valuable is goaltending. And if you have a goaltender you can count on, you're going to go far. If you do not have a goaltender who you can actually count on every single day, you're not going to win. I mean, shoot, just look at the playoffs. Igor Shesterkin with the New York Rangers. Sergei Bobrovsky out there in Florida. You're seeing what's going on with certain teams right now. They have a dependable goaltender. Shoot, look at our Vegas Golden Knights. Aiden Hill helped the Vegas Golden Knights win a Stanley Cup about a year ago. So, in terms of the LA Kings, are you still a contender? The answer is yes. What's the future of this team? It all depends on goaltending because you have valuable assets on the forwards. You have some good assets on defense. Goaltender is a question mark. But when it comes to Portelio, can he be an everyday goaltender? Him being in the AHL, I want to see him called up. I want to see him be in the NHL for a little bit and see if a 24-year-old goaltender can do good for the LA Kings. So, this is Vegas Hockey Hub. I'm your host, Ian Rachiele, and want to do something a little bit different on this episode. Until next time, continue watching hockey, go support junior hockey, and no, I am not going to say go Kings go.